Hello, I'm Siska Becker, and welcome to TVRI's World Special Report. At the ASEAN Summit in Cambodia on November 13, 2022, Indonesia received the mandate to hold the 2023 ASEAN Chairmanship. Carrying out this mandate, Indonesia adopted the theme Asian Matters, Epicentrum of Growth, which at the same time resonated with the success of Indonesia's G20 presidency in 2022. To know more about 2023 ASEAN Summit, let's start with our first report from Jakarta. Indonesian ambassador to South Korea, Gandhi Sulistianto, said, approaching the ASEAN Summit 2023 next September, South Korea stated its support to Indonesia as chairman of ASEAN by hosting several meetings.
Indonesia's ambassador to South Korea, Gandhi Sulistianto, said South Korea expressed its support to Indonesia as chairman of ASEAN Summit 2023 by hosting several meetings. Among others are official visits of President Joko Widodo and President Yoon Suk-yeol to discuss series of cooperation that will be conducted in the next few years.
And we have several activities, including to prepare the visiting of President Korea into Indonesia during the ASEAN Summit next September. So all those things we've been preparing, from time to time to give some input to the two head of states how to make a project or, event which is, as President Joko Widodo always in his mind, how to make deliverable project, not just only a common relationship only, but we should creating how to, in the real things, like what he did in the G20 in Bali last November.
Earlier, the Foreign Affairs Ministry, as well as ambassadors of Indonesia and South Korea, celebrated the 50th bilateral relations anniversary of Indonesia and South Korea with the hope to continue and enhance cooperations between both countries, especially in economy, human rights, and startup companies.
And here is the statement from Indonesian Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi regarding the ASEAN Summit 2023.
Bapak, di tengah tantangan dunia yang semakin sulit ini, cara pandang positif, kerjasama, dan optimisme justru semakin diperlukan. Cara pandang inilah yang akan digunakan Indonesia dalam menjalankan keketuaan di ASEAN tahun ini. Indonesia ingin menjadikan ASEAN resilient dan menjadi barometer kerjasama yang dapat berkontribusi bagi perdamaian, stabilitas, dan kesejahteraan kawasan dan dunia. Dengan semangat ini, keketuaan ASEAN 2023 mengambil tema ASEAN Matters, Epicentrum of Growth. Dengan ASEAN Matters, Indonesia bertekad menjadikan ASEAN tetap penting dan relevan bagi rakyat ASEAN and beyond. Dalam kaitan ini, maka masa depan ASEAN harus mulai disiapkan untuk menyongsong ASEAN 2045. Sentralitas ASEAN harus diperkuat agar mampu menjaga perdamaian, stabilitas, kemakmuran di Asia Tenggara dan Indo-Pasifik. Kerjasama penanganan kejahatan lintas batas penting diperkuat, demikian juga dengan ASEAN Human Rights Dialogue. Melalui subtema Epicentrum of Growth, Indonesia bertekad untuk terus menjadikan Asia Tenggara sebagai pusat pertumbuhan ekonomi. The history and the story of ASEAN is always related to economy.
The Indo-Pacific region has a strategic value that attract the attention of world superpowers, and it is the center of competition among them.
Indonesia's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Retno Marsudi, said in a press statement in Jakarta on Monday, the Indo-Pacific region has a strategic value. Minister Retno said collaboration paradigm is key to the development of the region, as it should be the center of collaboration instead of competition. Every dispute in the region should be settled through diplomatic means instead of wars. Minister Retno warned, though, if not handled through diplomatic means, such rivalries in the region may lead to an open conflict that may hurt peace, stability, and prosperity in the region. So there needs to be concerted efforts to prevent it from moving into an open conflict. In this context, a concrete cooperation under the ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific, or AOIP, should play an important role in the four areas, namely maritime, sustainable development goals, or SDGs, connectivity, and economy.
At the annual Press Statement 2023 with a theme of leadership in a challenging world, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia addressed Indonesia's focus in 2023, one of which is about ASEAN. TVRI World reporter Shafira Junior has more.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia just finished its annual press statement that was delivered by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia, Retno Marsudi. In her address, Retno Marsudi said that Indonesia will have a priority to strengthen the ASEAN cooperation, one of which is about the economy. And joining us now is Director General for ASEAN Cooperation, Pak Arto. Good afternoon, Pak Arto.
Good afternoon. Well, ASEAN has what it's called the 5-point consensus, which was agreed upon by all ASEAN leaders and General Min Aung Hlaing on behalf of the Myanmar military. It's almost 2 years ago. A number of elements in it is an inclusive dialogue process among the Myanmaris, humanitarian assistance, and also efforts by the Special Envoy. So these are among the elements. Now on the first one, Indonesia, as chair of ASEAN, will continue to encourage a conversation, a dialogue among all the parties of Myanmar. And we, on our part, we will also have that conversation with all the parties of Myanmar. It will be done throughout all existing platforms. We will establish avenues for such a conversation, such a diplomatic effort, to bring or to promote a process that is inclusive. Ultimately, the resolution of the crisis in Myanmar has to involve all the parties. For Indonesia, this has to be a Myanmar-led, Myanmar-owned effort, in which ASEAN plays a role in encouraging the process. So we will continue with those efforts, while at the same time we are quite cognizant that it is the Myanmar issue is complicated. There are various levels of this crisis. So we are not under any pretense that it can be resolved quickly. It will depend on the parties of Myanmar. We will encourage them to have a resolution as early as possible for the sake of the Myanmarese people, for the sake of regional stability. But we do not want the issue of Myanmar to also hold ASEAN hostage. ASEAN will continue with its effort to strengthen its community building efforts. ASEAN will continue with its effort as an epicentrum of growth, of economic growth. So we will continue with what is now the theme of this year, ASEAN Matters Epicentrum of Growth.
Pak Arto, how should Indonesia treat the issue on Rohingya refugee internally and externally? In your perspective, what kind of solution that will settle to help on the Rohingya refugee issue?
The Rohingya issue has to be settled by returning all the refugees to Myanmar. Those that are still in neighboring countries, the Myanmarese authorities would have to allow them back and now allow them to return in a dignified way and ensure that their rights as citizens of Myanmar are respected and promoted. In the meantime, Indonesia will cooperate with organizations like the UNHCR to ensure that the existing refugees, those that wish to be sent to receiving countries, could be done so in a dignified way and in a process that is expeditious and without delay.
So, Pak, ASEAN will be chaired by Indonesia in 2023, and there will be two summits on May, and the second one will be held in September. What are the priorities that Indonesia bring to ASEAN in 2023?
A number of things. The first is that we want to strengthen the internal workings of ASEAN. We want to ensure that ASEAN is agile enough to address both issues in Southeast Asia as well as the broader region of the Indo-Pacific. We are undertaking a review of ASEAN's capacity and institutional effectiveness, and we hope that by the end of this year, we can have an agreement in ASEAN on how to do so, the internal workings of ASEAN. We want to develop a common view about ASEAN vision for 2025, a 20 plus years vision, 2025, in which ASEAN by that time would be the third or fourth largest economic entity of the world, one that would play a critical role in the global economy. Even today, it's already the fourth largest economic entity, and we are working to develop that. So this gets into the second part of our theme, which is epicentrum of growth. As Minister said, that the ASEAN story has always been about economic development. So we'll continue with our efforts on the RCEP, develop RCEP, establish its permanent secretariat, but also we'll have a number of focused area such as food security. We want to ensure that in the event the food situation worsens, that ASEAN is ready, ASEAN is equipped to deal with it, both through ASEAN itself and through its cooperation with its partners. We want to strengthen the energy and energy transition. We want to ensure that the health architecture is further strengthened to ensure that in the event of another pandemic or another health emergency, that ASEAN is better able to deal, to address these matters, and also to strengthen financial stability through better use of local currency settlements.
Okay, Pak Arto, thank you so much for joining us now. And that was our interview with Director General for ASEAN Cooperation, Mr. Sidarto R. Suryodipuro. From the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia, Safira Enroy reporting for TVRI World.
And now to know more about the kickoff of the ASEAN Summit 2023 event, we will go to Zulhafiz Tadore, TV Our World's reporter, who is now at the HI roundabout to tell us more about the preparation and the event. Hello Zulhafiz, can you elaborate more on the event, please?
Hi there, Siska. I'm currently here at Bundaran HI in central Jakarta, and yes, we're still waiting for the event to be commenced, and shortly we will witness the kick-off of ASEAN or Indonesian Chairmanship of ASEAN this year, 2023, and I'd like to you to see a glimpse of a current situation here at Bundaran HI Central Jakarta, Siska. And then, yeah, and the current situation, Siska, everybody is still waiting for the president, President Joko Widodo, will be attending shortly here at Bundaran HI here in Central Jakarta to kick off the ASEAN Chairmanship, Indonesia's ASEAN Chairmanship this year, 2023. And there are some entertainments that will be held today here at Bundaran HI Central Jakarta, and such as the preparation of the parades will be presented by Jakarta government, and also the preparation by the VVIP participants of parade from Sarina by President of the Republic of Indonesia, President Joko Widodo, and also the ministers and the governor of Jakarta province, and there will be ambassadors and also head of missions here will be attending the kick-off of ASEAN Chairmanship in 2023. We will soon witness the kick-off of ASEAN Chairmanship this year, Siska, and I'll let you know. And then, yeah, until now we are still waiting for the VVIPs to be arrived here at Bundaran HI. The president and his entourage are still, are still on their way to come to Bundaran HI here in Central Jakarta, Siska. Back to you now, Siska.
All right, thank you, Zulhafiz Tadore of TV Our World, who is joining the crowd at the historic Bundaran HI for the kickoff of the ASEAN Summit 2023. Looks like the crowd are really excited to be there. I can sense the high energy, and I hope you can also enjoy the event and maybe join the CFD right after. Thank you, Zulhafiz, for that live report. Okay, now to talk more about the Indonesian chairmanship of ASEAN in 2023 and of the impacts to the world and for Indonesia itself, we now have a very special guest in the studio with us to talk more about this issue. We have Professor Alexius Jemadu, PhD, Professor of International Politics of the University of Pelita Harapan. Good morning, Prof. Alex.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for being here on a Sunday morning. We truly appreciate your time for being here.
It's my pleasure.
And of course, we're very excited to pick your brain a bit about the ASEAN chairmanship by Indonesia, who's going to be kicked off any moment now. Now, before we go into details, maybe you can tell us first, in general, in a nutshell, how do you see the appointment of Indonesia as chairman of ASEAN this year?
Yeah, I think it's a good opportunity for Indonesia to demonstrate and substantiate its international leadership in this region, Southeast Asia, for the sake of four important things. First of all, this is an opportunity for Indonesia to, together with other ASEAN countries, to maintain the momentum of economic growth as we are trying to recover from the current pandemic crisis. And the second thing is Indonesia's chairmanship in ASEAN is important for the sake of regional stability in Southeast Asia. Because without regional stability, we cannot develop our economy. So it's the second thing. And the third thing is that Indonesia's chairmanship will be used to encourage and to promote people-to-people interactions in Southeast Asia for tourism, for economic activities, for investment, for trade, and that way you can create an accumulated effect of economic growth, and then we can quicken our recovery from the pandemic crisis. And last but not least is how to find a permanent solution to the political crisis in Myanmar, where so many people suffer because of the political crisis, and ASEAN wants to demonstrate its ability to resolve this problem under Indonesia's chairmanship.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prof. Alex. Already you've given us these 4 points, which will be most likely the focus for Indonesia as it holds the ASEAN chairmanship. But before we go into more details about those 4 points, maybe you can also tell us what your opinion about what the international world is saying about Indonesia's role and of ASEAN itself. Now, Indonesia takes up the bloc's rotating chairmanship at a time when its centrality and efficacy of ASEAN is being called into question. How do you think is ASEAN current effectiveness in asserting influence and to protect its interest in regional?
Yeah, you're right that ASEAN now is under the spotlight of the international community because of the political crisis in Myanmar. But I believe that Indonesia's chairmanship is going to produce a good result this year, by which they will invite the junta leader in Myanmar to open the door for dialogue with the opposition group in Myanmar itself. Not for the sake of other countries, but for the sake of Myanmar people themselves. So Indonesia is in the position to offer a good thing for them, to find solution, to promote dialogue, because it's not good that the people of Myanmar live under this political crisis where other countries try their best to recover from the pandemic crisis. So this is very important, and we very much hope that under Indonesia's chairmanship, this political solution to the crisis can be formulated and will be accepted by the junta leader in Myanmar itself.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Alex, for that passionate answer. I think we all also share the same belief and hope that Indonesia can take swift action into providing solutions for this ongoing crisis in Myanmar. I would love to ask more questions actually about that topic because it is going to be a hot topic indeed for Indonesia during the chairmanship. But I hear that another guest is already joining us. Maybe we can say hello and good morning to the guest who is here. Hello, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. My pleasure. Thank you for
I truly appreciate it because it's Sunday morning, so of course your time here is very much appreciated. And I was just talking to Prof. Alex here about how Indonesia is now seen by the international world, especially as it holds now the chairmanship for ASEAN. And as Prof. Alex already eloquently explained about the 4 main focus for Indonesia: economic growth, regional stability, to promote people-to-people interaction. And of course, there is that hot issue about the conflict in Myanmar. What do you think of this?
First of all, I think this year will be a very critical year for Indonesia as a chairman of ASEAN. There are more expectations for sure from international community after they succeed in hosting G20 in Bali, and also, but also at the same time, of course, there's also doubts because currently the world is entering a post-pandemic era, which increasingly volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So pertaining the problems in certain countries like in Myanmar that may or may not affect the chairman of ASEAN into 2023, I believe if Indonesia succeeds in deciding priority steps that can be deliverables, out of all the existing problems, we can make a good use of this 1 year of chairmanship of Indonesia. And then the chairmanship can enhance Indonesia's role and leadership, strengthening its soft power, economic, and also health diplomacy, and secure national and regional interests. However, I would like to point out that Myanmar has always been really tough situations in the region, regardless of the chairmanship. So I believe that Indonesia and ASEAN should not be held in hostage and should try to do its best in order to deal with many issues in the region.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ayu Anastasia Rahman, for your point of view. And before we go back to our dialogue, will ask our viewers to look at together where the parade has already started. We're here at the HI roundabout. We're going to see for ourselves what is going on. And of course, we want to witness the very historical moment for Indonesia as the kickoff for the ASEAN Summit 2023 is about to begin. Let's have a look. Okay, Prof. Alex, Ms. Ayu, as you can see from the screen, the parade is already starting. It's really heartening to see how everybody is so excited about this new role.
The enthusiasm is there. It means that Indonesia accepts this responsibility with the full support of the people.
Yes.
Yeah? And you can see how the people attend this kick-off ceremony. And it means that we are all behind our president and our Minister of Foreign Affairs to support Indonesia's best effort to deal with the problems we are facing in Southeast Asia, in the economy, in security, in political matters. And this is really an opportunity to demonstrate to the world that Indonesia is actually informal leader in Southeast Asia, in this region. And it is good that the government and the people of Indonesia fully support this even this opportunity to so that we can contribute to regional peace and stability, and also ultimately the world peace in general, as we now begin to enjoy freedom from this pandemic crisis.
That's true. There are a lot of expectations from the international community for Indonesia, and I'm really happy to see that Indonesia is taking the lead as we now going to kick off the chairmanship. And I was just going to say we are very lucky to have the weather turned, because it was raining before.
Yeah, it was raining before.
You can see from the condition of the street there that it just recently rained, but luckily the rain has stopped, so the parade can start the festivities to begin and commence the kickoff event. We can also see a glimpse of President Jokowi just now walking to get to the point, to the stage, I would assume, where he's going to give a speech and then commence the Indonesian chairmanship.
So there is a good sign of nature that things are going to be all right.
Nature is on our side.
The nature is on our side, and we wish all the best for our president and also other ASEAN leaders.
Okay, now we can see there's our president. That's President Joko Widodo, right? He was looking down, so I wasn't sure for a minute there.
Is he in the middle?
Yeah, I think he was in the middle. Wearing a hat.
Wearing a hat. Black hat.
Yes. And because today is Sunday morning, so it's car-free day, so a lot of people, a lot of spectators.
That's true.
There, now we get a clear picture of our president walking proudly and happily with Ibu Retno Marsudi, the foreign minister, is also there.
Minister Retno is there. Together with the president and other high government officials also there. they're so relaxed, yeah, with all the informality.
Yes.
But it doesn't, reduce the rigor of Indonesia's determination to lead this international organization for the sake of people in Southeast Asia as a whole.
Yeah,
actually.
That's true. Any moment now, we're going to hear the speech from the president.
Right.
I think from that speech, we can also do some analyzing, because he will then, of course, state what are the focus for Indonesia during this chairmanship, what will be the first actions to be done in terms of, communicating the main focus of Indonesia itself.
Yeah.
Beautiful Sunday morning.
Beautiful
although
Sunday
a bit
morning.
cloudy, but we can see that everything is cleared up.
Yeah. You can see how the president smiles.
Yes, looks very relaxed.
All the time, relaxed, yeah.
Okay, he's now approaching the stage.
Yeah. So it gives much hope for the people,
Yeah.
that we can do our best to recover from the pandemic crisis that we are now trying to do our best, yeah?
Now we're going to go back to the HI roundabout when the president will start his speech. But for now, we'd like to go back to our guests, Prof. Alex and Ms. Ayu Rahman is still here with us. Now, Prof. Alex, at the beginning of our talk, you mentioned about Indonesia's success in the G20. I would love to go even deeper on that. But I just hear that there's going to be a press conference. We're going to go there now just to make sure we don't miss anything that the president has got to say. Let's have a look.
Asean.
Looking
Yang terhormat Presiden Republik Indonesia, Bapak Joko Widodo. Yang kami hormati, Yang Mulia para Duta Besar Negara Sahabat, Sekretaris Jenderal ASEAN, para Menteri Kabinet Indonesia Maju, penjabat Gubernur DKI Jakarta, beserta rombongan parade dan seluruh masyarakat Indonesia, kami ucapkan selamat datang dalam acara Kick-Off Keketuaan ASEAN Indonesia 2023.
Officially welcomed everyone in attendance,
Hadirin
the
sekalian,
President
marilah
and
kita
also
simak
ambassadors
bersama
of friendly
sambutan
countries
Presiden
who are
Republik
attending
Indonesia
this event.
dilanjutkan dengan memainkan rebana biang
Before we
sebagai
heard
simbol
the
dimulainya pelaksanaan kick-off
Indonesia's
keketuaan
national
ASEAN
anthem, Indonesia Raya,
2023.
followed by the ASEAN hymn. It gives a really solemn feel, and now the President is speaking.
Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera bagi kita semuanya. Kita telah menjalankan presidensi G20 dengan baik, dan tahun ini Indonesia menjadi ketua ASEAN di tengah-tengah situasi global yang sangat tidak mudah. Krisis ekonomi, krisis energi, krisis pangan, semuanya, perang, semuanya sedang terjadi. Tetapi saya meyakini bahwa ASEAN masih penting dan relevan bagi rakyat, bagi kawasan.
Okay, we are going to take a little break from the President's speech, but we'll go back for sure to analyze what is being said. So, Prof. Alex, Ms. Ayu Rahman, after hearing a few words of the President at the beginning of his speech, he immediately mentioned about Indonesia being successful in leading the G20 last year. Now, as we take up a new role as the chairmanship of the ASEAN, I want to talk more about this with you, Ms. Ayu Rahman. Indonesia assumes the ASEAN chairmanship, we could say, riding high on its success of G20 presidency in 2022. All right, excuse me, Ms. Ayu Rahman, I think we're going to go back to the President. We had a little bit of problem before, but let's hear again what the President has got to say.
Memainkan alat musik rebana biang.
Dan dengan mengucap Bismillahirrahmanirrahim pada pagi hari ini secara resmi saya nyatakan kick-off Keketuaan ASEAN Indonesia 2023 dimulai. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
It's official. Indonesia's chairmanship of ASEAN in 2023 has officially begun. The President himself just kicked off at the kicked-off event at the historical Bundaran HI. And of course, all of us are very excited indeed to see how Indonesia will treat this new role and how Indonesia will come up with solutions, of course, to overcome the challenges. But before that, I would love to continue my question to Ms. Ayu Rahman. As I was saying, Indonesia, we could say, is riding high on its success as G20 president in 2022. You know, despite we had major obstacles in the presidency, including the still ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, the global economic instability caused by COVID-19 pandemic. But Indonesia hosted a successful summit that launched a 1.4 billion pandemic fund to support low and middle income countries to tackle future global health threats. Just to say a few of the success that Indonesia did during the G20 presidency. Now, do you view Indonesia's G20 success can be like a boost to our likelihood to succeed in ASEAN chairmanship? Or do you think this is a whole new game altogether?
Thank you for the questions. I believe it's sides of the coin by Indonesia, I believe there must be a certain level of expectation from the international community, expecting Indonesia could do more in the chairmanship. Under Indonesia's leadership, it is hoped that ASEAN will become a stable and a peaceful region and become the anchor of world stability. Hence, Indonesia with ASEAN must consistently uphold the international law, the non-interference principle, and not act as a proxy for anyone, but also uphold human rights and democratic values. As I'm saying before, the successful G20 should be a boost, but also at the same time, we should be more realistic on the current situations in the region, per se, the situations in Myanmar. The crisis has been going for so long, and maybe Indonesia can try a different approach, and under Indonesia's leadership, it's also expected to be able to bring up new ideas and initiative in overcoming challenges and other crucial issues that are concerned to the region and the world. These goals sounds very ideal, obviously, but it really requires commitment from all parties to succeed, and Indonesia cannot be alone and should not be alone. There are 9 other ASEAN countries. There's also various multilateral cooperation framework, layers, types between ASEAN and other regions and countries. So to my mind, it seems that Indonesia will face both internal and external challenges. In the national level, the government need to increase their efforts to disseminate this information of Indonesian chairmanship to all members of society. So it's not become publicity only or the euphoria only. And I believe that the outreach, by outreaching the ASEAN information, should involve local stakeholders and academics, for example, like ASEAN Study Center, so that Indonesia's chairmanship can be understood, supported, and utilized by the Indonesian people themselves. Yeah.
All right, Ms. Ayu Rahman, thank you so much for your answer. I would like to go to Prof. Alex now. Maybe you also heard my question to Ms. Ayu Rahman. And I want to ask you about Indonesia's position now in the region, especially now that we officially are holding the chairmanship for ASEAN. Indonesia has a degree of political clout in ASEAN that maybe some previous chairs have lacked. Indonesia is one of the 5 founding members of ASEAN, and is often looked upon as the de facto leader of the association. It is also a major regional power that has exhibited strong economic growth since the waning of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, do you think this all could help Indonesia to tackle the many challenges that you mentioned at the beginning of our talk?
Yes, I think I would agree with you that Indonesia has those real credentials. Yeah. It has been acknowledged by many world leaders that Indonesia was or has been very successful in hosting G20 summit in Bali last year. And this is a kind of diplomatic capital for Indonesia to continue this success and to bring it into its chairmanship in ASEAN 2023 this year. So the optimism is there, the experience, and also all our credentials, not only in hosting this very important summit, but also we have demonstrated to the world that inside the country we have produced a good result in terms of economic growth, the way we control this pandemic, and this is a foundation of our self-confidence to demonstrate this international leadership now in Southeast Asia.
Okay,
and
very well, Prof. We're just going to go to the HI roundabout again to see how is the condition there after President Joko Widodo has officially kicked off the ASEAN summit. While we have that, please continue. You were saying that Indonesia indeed has the needed credentials and political clout to actually do some solid good during the chairmanship of ASEAN.
That's true. Because you see that the external circumstances when we were the leader of president of G20 and 2023, more or less the same.
Yeah.
So we are facing the same uncertainties, war in Ukraine and a political crisis in Myanmar, but we have the ability to go through this process with great success, with all the concrete deliverables that Minister Retno has mentioned in her annual press release. So it's clear, and that's why we need to support our government, our president, our Minister of Foreign Affairs, so that they can do their best, in reproducing this success with other ASEAN countries, and the world will see that ASEAN can be a source of hope for economic growth, which is in line with the theme of our chairmanship. ASEAN matters, epicentrum of growth. So it's a very good theme, and we really hope that all ASEAN leaders will support Indonesia's chairmanship to produce even more, for the sake of our people in Southeast Asia.
Thank you for your optimistic views, Prof. Alex. Ms. Ayu Rahman, if you're still with us, I would love to hear your opinion also about the theme of ASEAN. Professor Alex just mentioned ASEAN matters, the epicentrum of growth. Now, the first line, ASEAN matters, it seems like there's a message that we want to send out to the world that this region do matter. We have a lot of potential to contribute to the world. And even President Joko Widodo also mentioned in his opening speech previously that ASEAN is still relevant. What do you think is the meaning of this continuous message that we are sending? Ms. Ayu Rahman?
Yes, thank you. I think that by the theme, we can literally see the optimisms of Indonesia as a chairman of ASEAN this year. And I believe it should be supported by all of the people in Indonesia and also member of countries of ASEAN. And then saying that ASEAN matters is actually creating or sending message to the international community about our positions in regional, in Southeast Asia and also in Indo-Pacific and beyond. And I believe that with like Professor Bin said before, with the credentials and also the experience of ASEAN, I totally agree that ASEAN under Indonesian leadership will at least have fresh ideas under the leadership and try different ways in order to tackle different issues, such as, for example, like about food scarcity, and then about, for example, like energy. And for me, that all of these situations and challenges is undeniably a big challenge for ASEAN, especially
Ms. Ayu Rahman, I'm really sorry to cut you off. I'm really sorry, but we're going to see again how it is at the HI roundabout. Let's have a look together.
To ensure that ASEAN matters, let's work hand in hand to make ASEAN a stable epicentrum of growth in the region and beyond.
In association with
Indonesia memulai tanggung jawab sebagai ketua atau chairman ASEAN 2023 dengan mengusung tema ASEAN Matters, Epicentrum of Growth. Indonesia bersama negara-negara anggota ASEAN lainnya akan memastikan ASEAN akan terus menjadi pusat pertumbuhan dengan masyarakatnya yang tangguh dan berdaya. Pertanyaannya sekarang, apa saja isu-isu prioritas yang akan didorong, diusung, dan diinisiasi oleh Indonesia dan kemudian dibahas bersama-sama dengan seluruh anggota ASEAN, tentunya dengan melakukan pendekatan-pendekatan khusus khas Indonesia. Pagi hari ini kita akan membahas dengan Direktur Jenderal Kerjasama ASEAN Kementerian Luar Negeri Republik Indonesia, Bapak Sidarto R. Suryo Dipuro. Pak Harto, selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi.
Terima kasih Bapak atas waktunya, ini luar biasa sekali, ramai acaranya, sukses sekalipun turun hujan sedikit. Sekali lagi selamat kepada Kementerian Luar Negeri, selamat untuk Indonesia karena sudah melakukan kick-off keketuaan ASEAN tahun 2023. Pak Harto, kalau misalnya kita lihat sekarang ASEAN Matters, Epicentrum of Growth, message-nya apa sebenarnya?
Terima kasih. Pertama-tama ini adalah perayaan untuk kita semua mengawali kick-off suatu tahun yang besar untuk tidak hanya Indonesia, untuk ASEAN, juga untuk kawasan yang lebih luas dan dunia. Tema ASEAN Matters, Epicentrum of Growth, ini melambangkan keinginan Indonesia untuk mendorong kawasan yang lebih inklusif, pertumbuhan yang lebih tinggi, karena ASEAN itu selalu merupakan cerita tentang ekonomi. It's the story of economy. Dan bersama dengan itu juga ASEAN dapat mempertahankan stabilitas kawasan bersama mitra-mitranya. Ini adalah kawasan yang sangat terbuka dan luar biasa strategis dengan potensi ekonomi yang sangat besar, kekuatan ekonomi nomor 5 dunia. Jadi ASEAN Matters itu menunjukkan bahwa kita akan bekerja lebih keras untuk ASEAN sendiri, memperkuat mekanisme ASEAN, dan kita akan bekerja keras untuk suatu kawasan yang terus stabil dengan kemakmuran yang terus meningkat walaupun berbagai persoalan serius tengah menghadang kita seperti krisis pangan, krisis energi, kesehatan. Jadi ini adalah urgent issues yang hendak kita tangani dan tentunya ada isu-isu besar lain yang akan kita tangani. Jadi itu mencerminkan tema. Kita punya formula 2+1, 2+1 formula. Duanya adalah ASEAN Matters, memperkuat.
We just saw a talk show at the HI Roundabout between the host and Pak Sidarto R. Suryo Dipuro, Director General for ASEAN Cooperation. And he also mentioned that this moment is a big moment indeed, not just for Indonesia, but for the whole ASEAN as Indonesia officially begins its chairmanship for ASEAN. And again, he reiterated the theme about ASEAN Matters is actually to signify Indonesia's wish to create a more inclusive region, a more stable with huge economic potential. And that is exactly what you mentioned before, Prof. Alex, that
That's true.
this is actually to signify our wish to push for a more stable, so we can all concentrate on probably the issue that matters most to its people, economic growth.
That's true.
Do you agree with that?
Yes, of course. If you look at the facts, the projection of economic growth of ASEAN for 2023 is 4.7%.
Okay.
Way higher than the projection for world economic growth, which is only 2.7%.
Oh, wow. Significantly higher.
Yes, it's quite significant in the sense that ASEAN can be force to recover from global economic crisis. And that's why we give our support to our government, that our government can, negotiate with other ASEAN leaders, what to do next in order to at least maintain this momentum, as all countries in Southeast Asia are now trying to recover from the crisis. So this is a momentum, ASEAN of around 600 million people, with a relatively high economic growth. and Indonesia is the largest economy in Southeast Asia. So this is really a strong foundation, yeah, to start Indonesia's chairmanship this year. And I believe that we can do more, yeah, on the basis of our success last year with G20 summit. And now we can do the same thing for ASEAN, yeah, to show to the world that indeed Indonesia is the informal leader of this regional entity.
Yeah.
And it ought to be so, as far as we are concerned, because we are the largest here,
Yes.
yeah, the largest in terms of population, the largest in terms of size, yeah, and other ASEAN countries expect much from Indonesia's chairmanship, yeah, 2023.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Now, Prof. Alex, if you remember at the G20 summit, which is actually an economic summit,
that's true.
the main focus was to be on the economic growth as well.
Yes.
But the economic topics were a bit sidelined because of the most contentious issue at that time, the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, and
That's
which
true, yes.
word to use at the declaration to, you know, to summarize how the summit was, you know, feeling about that particular issue. Now, for ASEAN summit, would the same happen? I mean, we also want to have more economic growth and to work together to reach more stability. But how is that going to be possible when we have this ongoing crisis in Myanmar happening? Now, before you answer that, maybe we can help our viewers to understand more about this issue. Could you please give us more context and tell us, in your knowledge, what is actually the current condition now in Myanmar, and why is it so hard to resolve the issue?
Yeah, the political crisis in Myanmar is quite complicated. Yeah, because you see that they have this junta leader who wants to stay in power, but we have also this opposition group, civil society, who wants to get also their share in the government. Yeah. I believe that under Indonesia's chairmanship, dialogue can be, you know, promoted. In order to find a permanent solution with this problem. Otherwise, our economic growth will be jeopardized, and the people of Myanmar themselves will continue to be, you know, under the same economic pressure, which is very unfortunate because the Myanmar government can do more, to refer to the five points consensus, taken by the government of ASEAN in Jakarta 2021. So those 5 points are actually very good points, and they take into account also the political interest of junta leaders themselves. So there's no reason for them to reject those good suggestions from ASEAN that we, you know, we lend our hands. Look, we want to help you. We want to find best solution for your own people, not for the sake of Indonesia or United States or China, but for the sake of Myanmar people themselves, because they deserve,
suffering the most.
They deserve to, you know, to send their kids to school, to have jobs and to have their economic growth,
to have their basic rights, basically.
Their basic rights. So we support them to enjoy life, and to free from all this pandemic crisis. So ASEAN leaders are there under Indonesia's chairmanship, and the junta, military junta in Myanmar, they have to take this opportunity, that ASEAN leaders are willing to help them, to find solution to their political crisis.
Thank you, Prof. Alex, for that illustrative explanation about what is actually going on in Myanmar. Now, I would love to continue this topic with Ms. Ayu Rahman. Ms. Ayu, I'm sure you also know that compared to Cambodia, who holds the previous chairmanship of ASEAN, Indonesia has adopted a more critical stance of the military government, the junta, as Professor Alex mentioned. Indonesia's Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi blamed the junta for failing to resolve the conflict ahead of the ASEAN summit in November. She mentioned this in November, and the following month, she also made a statement that ASEAN must not be dictated by the Myanmar military junta. That is quite a strong statement. And then the 5-point consensus, which Prof. Alex also mentioned before, was ASEAN's only track of engagement with Myanmar. Now, Ms. Ayu Rahman, how do you think Indonesia will resolve the Myanmar crisis, especially with a rumor going on that there's a discord within ASEAN over the degree of acceptable engagement with the junta? It is very complicated indeed, as Prof. Alex mentioned.
Yes, it's indeed a very complicated issue. Pertaining the saying of Professor, I believe the motives of the junta military that feels doubt to accept ASEAN positive approach is because they believe that ASEAN with all the other member of the countries are trying to force them to uphold democracy. So this is one of the ways that from the junta militaries perceive ASEAN. But also you touch a very interesting point about Indonesia's way in approaching the issue. One of the research suggests that Indonesia could initiate and encourage a military-to-military engagement with Myanmar so that Myanmar can consider the example of Indonesia's military reform. And such a move may change Myanmar's mindset towards military roles and convince skeptics that having a civilian rule does not mean the military will be marginalized. And instead, it can be strong in more humane way. And Indonesia has only ever conducted shuttle diplomacy, although, as you mentioned, have a strong statement to push for concerted effort to deal with the conflict. So I might explain a little bit about the shuttle diplomacy. Shuttle diplomacy is the actions of an outside party serving as intermediary between the principals in dispute. However, this quote-unquote soft approach seems to take a slight turn when ASEAN decided not to invite Myanmar's military junta to its 55th Foreign Minister Summit last year because the country did not follow a 5-point consensus that has been agreed upon on democracy, good governance, respect for human rights, and also constitutional government. This bolder move of ASEAN, led by Indonesia, may mean Myanmar would be isolated from ASEAN activities unless it shows more progress on reaching 5 points of consensus. Now, the question is, does it work, though? The answer perhaps, because right now, excluding Myanmar from the summit, junta gradually opened the special envoy, for example, under Cambodia's chairmanship, slowly but gradually affected them. So in this bolder approach, we'll push better progress to resolve Myanmar crisis in long term. And then this ASEAN way, I think, Indonesia has more vocals and also more bolder way in approaching that.
Thank you, Ms. Ayu Rahman, for your answer. And now to know more about the current situation in the HI roundabout, we'll go back to our reporter Zulhafidz Taudore for more report on what's going on there, especially with the event. Let's see. Zulhafidz, can you tell us more about what is going on now at the Bundaran HI area?
Hi there, Siska. Well, yes, today's kickoff marks the start of Indonesia hosting the 2023 ASEAN Summit. And the logo of the 2023 ASEAN also can be seen at the Bundaran HI Central Jakarta. And let me take you back a little bit that Indonesia received the ASEAN chairmanship from Cambodia, making Indonesia officials the chairman of ASEAN 2023. Handover of the chair took place in Cambodia at the closing ceremony of the 40th and 41st ASEAN summits and related summits in Cambodia on November last year, 2022. And symbolically, President Joko Widodo at the moment received the hammer from Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen as a sign that Indonesia had become chairman of ASEAN. And Siska, the President Joko Widodo said that ASEAN must become a stable and peaceful region anchor of world stability, and also ASEAN must consistently uphold international law and not become anyone's proxy. And also the president wished ASEAN to become a fast-growing, inclusive, and also sustainable economic region. Increasing the capacity of ASEAN institutions is also a concern of President Joko Widodo. And Siska, President Joko Widodo, in order to be also mentioned that in order to be able to answer challenges in the next 20 years, the president hopes by 2045 that ASEAN would be able to become more adaptive, responsive, and also competitive. And Indonesia's chairmanship in ASEAN 2023 will also raise 3 priority issues in economy, namely recovery and rebuilding, and also digital economy and sustainability, with reference to the main achievement targets that have been set, Siska. First, Indonesia to rebuild regional growth, connectivity, competitiveness, as well as strengthen food security, and also finance by ensuring food and food supply chains. And second, Indonesia seeks to accelerate transformation of an inclusive and participatory digital economy, and also improve quality digital infrastructure to bridge the digital divide. And the third, Siska, that Indonesia will emphasize the importance of sustainable economic growth by encouraging issue of blue economy and transition to renewable energy, while remaining aligned with principles of accessibility, affordability, and sustainability for ASEAN people. And Siska, as I mentioned earlier, that today's kick-off marks the start of of Indonesia hosting the 2023 ASEAN Summit, and we'll be waiting a number of events that will be held during this year, Indonesia's Chairmanship 2023. We are also looking forward to the event to be commenced shortly. And in the meantime, Siska, that concludes my report at the Bundaran HI here in Central Jakarta. I'm Zulhafiz Tadore, and our camera person Hari Hamdallah reporting to you. Back to you now, Siska.
Thank you, Zulhafiz, for your comprehensive recap of the president's speech. I hope you now can enjoy all the festivities in Bundaran HI and maybe join a little bit of CFD so you can have a really healthy and energetic Sunday. Thank you, Zulhafiz. Okay, now we just heard the recap of the president's speech, and there is one point there that Zulhafiz, our reporter, mentioned that I would love to dive deeper with you, Prof. Alex. The president mentioned that ASEAN should uphold international law and not be anyone's proxy. Now, this is a very interesting statement, and I think it sends a clear message to some parties in the international community, and because this actually is in line with another statement that the president made last year in November, how ASEAN should not let current geopolitical dynamics turn into a new Cold War in our region. That was his statement last year. It should be a peaceful region and anchor for global stability. Now, what do you think is the particular issue that he's mentioning? Everybody is saying it's the geopolitical power grabbing of China and United States is actually the main concern. So that is why President Joko Widodo has mentioned these talking points. What do you think, Prof?
Yeah, you're right. We have to look at those statements within their context. Yeah. And if you look at what is happening in our external environment in Southeast Asia, in Indo-Pacific as a whole, there is indeed a kind of contestation of powers, especially in those trouble spots, like South China Sea, issue of Taiwan, Korean Peninsula, and the nature of this conflict in those trouble spots is that there's always a pattern of great powers using proxy to promote their strategic
and to gain
interest.
allies.
And I think the statement of our leader is quite appropriate in the sense that we don't want to be the proxies of anyone. We want to see Indonesia independent, free, and also the same thing for ASEAN. We want to be ourselves. Yeah. We want to deal with all the problems, economic problems, social problems, the health problems here, and we don't want to be disrupted, by external interference because they have their own agenda, for contestation of power, for power politics. We want peace in this region, because without peace, we cannot really develop our economy, we cannot develop our infrastructure, we cannot provide public service for our people. So we need peaceful stability in our region, and we want United States and China, please support us, please support ASEAN to create a conducive environment, in which people can develop their economy, in which we can activate all the economic activities, trade, investment, tourism, because we have all this potential. And it has been 3 years, we are in a situation where we cannot activate all these economic activities. And now, as the pandemic subsides, it is the opportunity for all the people to go back to their economic activities, to go back to their education, to go back to their job creation, investment, trade, etc. And that way we can activate the whole economy of the region, and it will create demands for goods and services from other developed countries as well. So it is good also for them to see economic growth in ASEAN and Indonesia.
It is for the greater good for everyone.
That's true, yes.
To keep the stability and the peace of the region. Yeah. So how about you, Ms. Ayu Rahman, when talking about this contentious issue as well, you know, the conflict between US and China, which somehow also affects the region here in ASEAN, and with all the statements made by our president, how do you think Ibu Retno Marsudi will maneuver, you know, herself and the government towards these issues, and how do you think we can face these challenges that might be imminent in the future with all the conflicts going on in the, you know, hot spots that Professor Alex mentioned before, like South China Sea, for example? What do you think, Ms. Ayu?
Yes. So as you said, that these situations are undeniably a big challenge to ASEAN, but they also need to be seen as an opportunity to be better. The way I see it, ASEAN is at the crossroad with increasingly changing geopolitical situation in the region. For example, like in the issue of contestation of power, ASEAN faces challenges with the dispute of its alliances. For example, like power grabbing, as you mentioned, between the US and China over the South China Sea. And then I think one of the important point that can be used by our Ministry of Foreign Affairs is ASEAN have a really specific style in approaching a diplomacy. ASEAN highly upholds the sovereignty of its member state. On the other hand, this can be a good thing because it creates a sense of trust and mutual respect between member of countries. But it could also become a big challenge if it region faces pressing issues that require courageous and bold action from ASEAN as a multilateral forum to resolve them. And one way I can see it, that the chairmanship, although only for a year, I believe that Indonesia has always been there since the first day, and Indonesia has always showed the capacity to lead the region. So I have no doubts that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will expected to visit more countries in the region in order to build dialogues and to bridge certain critical issues, you know, for example, or especially an economic growth. And although we have faced a tremendous I think, a tremendous drawbacks during the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
But I believe that Indonesia has coming back even stronger than before. Our economy is rising, and then we have the statement, the last statement from our Ministry of Economy said that Indonesia may not be facing recession in 2023. I think this is a very good optimism that give us the pictures of Indonesians are strong at home and also have a strong potentials abroad.
Okay. I love your positive outlook on this, Ms. Ayu Rahman, that this is actually an opportunity, but I don't think we can debate that. One of the challenges for Indonesia is, of course, how to maintain ASEAN neutrality in the face of growing great power competition between U.S. and China. And maybe we can talk about that later as the chairmanship progresses during the year. But I would love to get to more talking points and more issues facing Indonesia as we now officially begin our chairmanship. And one of the most pressing issues, most pressing matters, is of course the issue of the Rohingya refugees.
Yeah.
How do you think, Prof, Indonesia should address this internally and externally? What kind of solutions can actually help to settle this issue of the Rohingya refugees?
Yeah, Rohingya refugee has been complicated issue, for Myanmar and also for other ASEAN members. So what ASEAN can do is to continue to work together with Myanmar government.
Yeah.
Although I believe that ASEAN countries cannot do much to find permanent solution to their problem. I think Myanmar government can do it themselves, because it is kind of domestic issue for them. But what ASEAN can continue to do is to provide humanitarian assistance for these people. Because, these are real human beings. They suffer economically, they suffer socially, because they are kind of excluded from the rest of the society. But we can give them humanitarian assistance because they need, logistics, food, health, all this health.
Assistance and aid,
They need those help from ASEAN countries. So we can improve or increase our help assistance in humanitarian issues. And then that is what ASEAN can certainly do, under Indonesia's chairmanship. And we hope that through this humanitarian assistance, their sufferings will be reduced and they can, be active in their activities, everyday activities. They can send kids to school, they can find jobs, and let us also work together with Myanmar government in order to find political solution of this problem of Rohingya refugees.
Yeah. I think you spoke on behalf of all of us who really eager to have the perfect solution. So at least the Rohingya refugees can have their dignity back and to live their life, as human beings. Okay, now for the next question, I would love to go to Ms. Ayu Rahman. If you're still there, Ms. Ayu Rahman?
Yes.
You mentioned before in your answer about health issue being somewhat also an opportunity for Indonesia now that the pandemic is waning a little bit. Now, if you remember, one of the success for Indonesia in the G20 presidency is how we handled the health infrastructure issue and how we managed to, collect the fund to help underdeveloped countries if they are hit with another pandemic. Now, how do you think Indonesia will tackle the health issue now as chairman of ASEAN?
I think these new positions, although we have been experiencing it for a couple times, like this is the 4th times, but I think the world is changing and there is always a new factors that can contribute to the success of Indonesian chairmanship. And with the success of what happened, I'm not sugarcoating, but after seeing the statistic of what happened in Indonesia and then how we grow out of the problems, I believe that in these situations, Indonesia can harnessing the health diplomacy, especially the infrastructure. Because if you remember in the early of the pandemic COVID-19, one of the reasons why we can thrive is because of the help of other countries, other neighboring countries, and also other countries beyond the region by sending us vaccines and giving us capital to begin with in order to tackle the health problems at home. So I think it's a give and take, you know, after receiving much from the international community as to where we struggle in the first year of pandemic. I think it is now for Indonesia to spread the success abroad and then trying to make sure that the health issue is being highlighted across the agendas, because obviously without, if we keep suffering with the health problems and also these uncertainties may or may not be jeopardizing to Indonesia chairmanship in the future, if something like pandemic COVID-19, repeating again in the future. So that's why I think to put the health agenda into one of the focal points of ASEAN is very important, and it is very clear that Indonesia also wants the same by also highlighting the issues in both G20 and also in the FGD that has been held a couple of times in 2022.
Thank you, Ms. Ayu. I think it's also safe to say this is another great opportunity for Indonesia to come up as a leader in sharing, you know, all the solutions that we use to tackle the pandemic. And I think this will be a great chance for us to share all those applicable solutions that made us so successul in the world for tackling the pandemic. Now, last question for Prof. Alex. This is also a lot of people's question about the ASEAN and Indonesia's chairmanship. It's about Timor-Leste's inclusion into ASEAN. People say it's only going to be a formality, as in principle. It has been agreed by all ASEAN member countries. But I just want to know, how do you see the inclusion of Timor-Leste into ASEAN?
I think it is a good thing for Timor-Leste to be part of ASEAN, in the sense that all countries in Southeast Asia can work together, you know, can establish rules and principles, within ASEAN itself, because it is very important for ASEAN centrality, to build what they call rule-based regional order, It's based on international law. And if Timor-Leste can join ASEAN, it means that all countries in Southeast Asia now can come up with one voice, especially in dealing with these great powers. Can you imagine if one of these Southeast Asian countries is co-opted by the great powers? It will be very complicated for regional stability. Now that Timor-Leste, by principle, is accepted, in the process of becoming ASEAN member, I think we should welcome it as a good step, in order to ensure the stability of the region. Because if you look at the history, Southeast Asia has been a point where these great powers, you know, they are competing, to spread their sphere of influence. We want to own this region. Indonesia is here, Indonesia is the largest member of ASEAN. That's why we have to use this chairmanship to demonstrate, yes, Indonesia is a responsible leader. Indonesia can contribute to regional peace as stipulated by our constitution, 1945. We want to contribute to world peace, and this will add to the credibility of our diplomacy, with other people. We can solve our internal problems, but we can contribute something useful for the international community, starting from Southeast Asia and also beyond to the world, as we have demonstrated last year in Bali.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
And it is also another great opportunity for Indonesia to step up as one of the world leaders and actually make some peace with the past and look forward to the future of working together.
Yes.
Now, Ms. Ayu Rahman, before I let you go, maybe you can also comment on this issue quickly and also maybe express your wishes now that we have officially begun the chairmanship for ASEAN. Ms. Ayu, please.
I think that this is a very good opportunity. It's extremely good opportunity, despite of the challenges and despite of the problems that we may face in the future. However, like that, as we discussed earlier, I think that Indonesia have shown a very mature approach as to being a leader in the region, and I believe that it is increasing the reputations, international reputation abroad. Indonesia in the further in the near future may become the leader not only in the region but also beyond. Last but not least, I think that despite of the festivities, we would like to expect for Indonesian government to also make sure that they have been translating all of these plans very specific, so that it can be carried out in 1 year ahead under the Indonesian chairmanship. If I can touch one point that we can expect Indonesia will be doing better is about the refugees. We haven't talked that much in these sessions, but I believe that refugees from Rohingya itself has been creating problems towards the neighboring countries because it flew over and then resides and then it creates like financial burden and all of these social challenges. And then I think Indonesia can show some dignified way and create more dialogues towards Myanmar. And last but not least, the very last thing that I would like to say that we are very happy that Indonesia can step up to be the major and the big brother in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ayu Rahman, for your concise summation of our discussion. And again, thank you so much for your time, for being here. We truly appreciate your insights, as well to Prof. Alexius Jemadi, PhD, Professor of International Politics, University of Pelita Harapan, and Ms. Ayu Anastasia Rahman, International Relations and Diplomacy Researcher. Thank you so much for being with us. I look forward to seeing you more when we have more upcoming special reports on TVRI World.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. And also thank you to all of you, our viewers, for joining us. And that is the end of our special report. I'm Siska Becker. Thank you for watching. Do stay tuned to TVRI World for more updates on Indonesia's chairmanship of ASEAN in 2023. Thank you, take care, and goodbye.